As it's been over 2 years since we looked at the fleet of Singapore Airlines, it's high time we reapproached the Southeast Asian carrier. The fleet has changed a little over this period, losing some A380s and 777s, while gaining 787s and A350s, among other aircraft. So let's get started. And so, at a glance, the Singapore Airlines passenger fleet consists of the following aircraft types and quantities: 65 A350-900s, 7 of which are -900 ULRs, 12 A380s, 1 737-800, 19 737 MAX 8, 22 777-300 ERs, and finally 26 787-10s. Now, we don't always cover freighters, but since they are also listed under the Singapore Airlines page on planespotters.net, the carrier's dedicated cargo fleet consists of 7 747-400Fs and 5 777Fs. There are also 7 A350-1000Fs on the way, although this will be a little further into the future. But on the topic of aircraft still to be delivered, chaviation.com data shows that Singapore Airlines is still to take delivery of the following jets: 7 737 MAX 8s, 5 787-10s, and of course the 777-9. The Star Alliance member is listed as expecting 31 of these wide bodies. In terms of changes to the passenger fleet since our last Singapore Airlines fleet video, the airline has retired 737-800s and A380s. New aircraft delivered to the carrier include 737 MAX 8s, A350-900s, and 787-10s. The 737-800s previously flew for Singapore Airlines subsidiary Silk Air before the offshoot was absorbed back into its parent airline. After that, these jets flew under the Singapore Airlines brand. They have been slowly phased out as more new 737 MAX 8s join the fleet. Already in 2025, we've seen 4 -800s leave the fleet, and so we're pretty sure that very last airframe will follow quite soon. Interestingly, per data from planespotters.net, a lot of these retired 737-800s headed to Australia. 2 went to Rex before being passed on to Garuda Indonesia, while 5 went to Virgin Australia. Another 2 were picked up by Qantas. And then when it comes to the A380s, these had never rejoined the fleet after the pandemic. Our guess is that Planespotters listed them as being part of Singapore Airlines as there was still a great deal of uncertainty surrounding the carrier's Super Jumbo reactivation plan. Despite that, the A380s remain very much appreciated by customers. Singapore Airlines Regional Vice President for Europe, Joey Sao, tells us in an interview for Simple Flying. The airline currently operates 12 Airbus A380-800s, of which 2 are currently undergoing maintenance, according to CH Aviation data. Singapore Airlines is one of the few remaining Airbus A380 operators in the world and is known for its luxury onboard offering, including its first-class suites. However, since taking delivery of its first Super Jumbo back in 2007, times and needs have changed. Since then, it has taken a total of 24 of the double-decker jets, but 50% of the fleet has already been retired, including the first ever delivery registered 9 Kilo Sierra Victor Alpha. Speaking to Simple Flying team member Dylan Shah, Singapore Airlines Regional Vice President for Europe, Joey Sao, was quoted as saying, "The A380 is a much-loved plane by many of our customers. This is in part because the fuselage is the widest in the industry today. We can do more through the real estate of the A380. For example, in our suites, we have a separate bed with a separate chair, and that's all primarily because the space that we have on that plane is wider than any other in the industry. So consequently, it is much loved, but at the same time, it is also an aging plane." Eventually, the A380 will be withdrawn from service with Singapore Airlines. Some had suggested the aircraft could be withdrawn in early 2026, but booking systems stifled such rumours. According to schedule data from Cirium, Singapore Airlines continues to schedule the plane on key routes through June 2026. A380 retirements in summer are unlikely, as that extra capacity is often needed to meet higher demand. Beyond that, schedules have not yet been released. Sal tells Simple Flying, "We cannot hold on to it forever. Eventually, the A380 and the 777 will leave the fleet because having a modern, young fleet is a key part of our value proposition." Indeed, the future for Singapore Airlines looks to be primarily based on the A350-900, 787-10 and 777-9. As you probably already know, however, some types have been extremely delayed in being delivered to the carrier. This has unfortunately forced the airline to delay its own expansion plans. For example, Singapore Airlines wants to grow even more at London Gatwick. However, the airline told us that its planning horizon is being controlled by Boeing and Airbus. The aforementioned regional vice president for Europe told us, "Unfortunately, there have been a fair number of delays by the aircraft manufacturers, in part because of the pandemic, in part because some of them have production issues and constraints, strikes, etc. Our deliveries, like with many other airlines, have been delayed. At this point in time, we do not have very strong visibility on how the deliveries will come about, consequently impacting our expansion plans." And so, again, Singapore Airlines must adapt to the constraints imposed by delivery delays, and this means holding back on expansion, but also holding on to older aircraft for longer. And on this topic, in late 2024, Singapore Airlines announced a cabin refurbishment program for 41 of its Airbus A350 aircraft. Valued at 1.1 billion Singapore dollars, equivalent to more than 800 million US dollars, the investment will take passenger comfort to the next level on the carrier's long-haul routes, particularly for customers flying in the airline's premium cabins. We don't have too many visuals, but we know that the A350-900 ULR will see some changes. The aircraft will get 4 first-class suites that Singapore Airlines says will, quote, "set new industry benchmarks for travel on the world's longest routes, designed with increasingly discerning travellers in mind." Revised A350-900 ULR layout will feature 4 first-class suites, 70 business-class seats, and 58 premium economy class seats. For anyone wondering, the current A350-900 ULR configuration has 67 seats in business and 94 in premium economy. The first refurbished non-ULR A350 is projected to enter service rather soon, in Q2 of 2026. So that's your summary of the Singapore Airlines fleet in 2025. The carrier's narrow-body fleet will consist solely of 737 MAX 8, while its wide-body fleet continues to include older aircraft like the A380 and 777-300ER. This will eventually change when the 777-9s are delivered, but, well, that could take a while. What do you think of the Singapore Airlines fleet? Let us know by leaving a comment. In addition to our daily YouTube videos, Simple Flying publishes over 150 articles and a podcast every week. Visit simpleflying.com.